Most men learn about sex through male culture or pornography. That is where the tragedy begins. Em was lucky enough to learn about sex from women first. Around the age of 20, dragged to a brothel as a rite of passage by his peers, Em's body outright refused to react. He was the type whose body only followed the heart, and he had never been able to observe women as mere sexual objects. Later, during his military service, Em befriended the hostesses at a terminal coffee shop while waiting for the transport truck. To this oddball virgin who called himself an endangered species, they opened Em's eyes to the theory of sex through conversation. They were true pros of the night, having faced countless desires and anxieties firsthand in the harshest realities of life, and their words were full of insights born from raw experience. But a smart woman named Miss Kim, who entered the industry for economic reasons, was different. Having dated a renowned urologist, she was a rare woman who had learned the sexual arts and health management. She understood and mastered sex not merely through provocative anecdotes, but from a medical and logical perspective. She was Em's first mentor. Fearing he would be an incompetent male unable to satisfy a woman on his first time, Em confessed his worries. She answered clearly, "A woman feels true orgasm with the man she loves. Stop worrying, fall in love, and have a beautiful first experience. This is the first truth. Before any shallow male techniques, if there is no emotional connection and safety, allowing a woman's body to unlatch its own doors, the gateway to true orgasm will never open." Later, through a female mentor 10 years his senior, a successful businesswoman and former professional, Em was able to translate the sexual knowledge he only knew as text into the perfect language of practice. Stage 1. Kissing, the rise of connection. Moving from lip to deep to French. The core is not artificial intensity, but the rise of connection. The touching of lips is not an attack, but an exploration to tune into each other's unique frequencies. What you must read is your partner's breath, whether it slows or quickens, whether the lips tense or relax. It is crucial to slowly elevate the excitement together. You must enjoy the kiss itself. This maintains a constant emotional connection, acting as sensory savings for the day you will eventually have sex. Stage 2. Skinship, feeling touch. The biggest mistake beginners make is hastily seeking bare skin. True skinship happens with clothes on. It is the stage of feeling touch, using the friction of fabric to sense each other's body heat and contours, making the body sensorially aware of each other. When combined with kissing, its impact multiplies. When warmth and pressure are transmitted through the thin veil of clothing before direct skin contact, the nervous system actually reacts more sensitively. If bare skin stimulation is explicit, stimulation through fabric is implicit. The brain is wired to focus more intensely on incomplete stimuli. This is why feeling touch is not mere foreplay, but a scientific stage of preheating the female nervous system. Stage 3. Caress, indulgence of the whole body. The only rule when touching a woman's body is to treat it like cotton candy. Cotton candy is not bitten or roughly licked. It is melted through a gentle indulgence of the lips and tip of the tongue. A woman's entire body is an erogenous zone. Certain parts are just slightly more sensitive. When using your hands, you must entirely release the tension in your fingers. The moment you apply force, it becomes a massage. Only when you relax and touch like a feather does it truly become a caress. Stage 4. Clitoral orgasm, the key to the gateway. Inducing a clitoral orgasm first during caressing is extremely crucial. With over 10,000 nerve fibers reported in the dorsal nerve alone, this is the core organ of female sexual response, an intricate sensory network, and the body's hot switch. Here lies a profound misconception born of male communities, treating the G-spot as a magic vending machine button that triggers orgasms when furiously jabbed. Medically, the G-spot is not an isolated switch, but a deeper internal extension of this vast clitoral network. Therefore, rough and forceful handling is strictly forbidden. A horizontal approach is more effective than vertical, narrowing from the periphery to the center rather than direct stimulation. The rhythm is best kept constant. It is not about increasing intensity, but increasing the density of the rhythm. That difference is decisive. When your partner's pelvis begins to subtly follow, that is the signal to keep going. At this time, gently caress the Skene's glands located around the urethral opening at the upper part of the inner labia. Unlike the flood-like fantasies created by porn, only a microscopic fluid is actually released here, usually mistaken for vaginal fluid. Reaching clitoral orgasm at this stage perfectly prepares the woman's body. With sufficient lubrication, vaginal relaxation, and deep connection established, the satisfaction of subsequent penetration rises vertically. This clitoral orgasm is the baseline of a normal orgasm that a woman can also reach through masturbation. Once this baseline is fully experienced, the body isn't forced open. A fully prepared body naturally invites the next step. When her body invites, enter slowly, shallowly. Let her lead to the depth. But this is only the baseline. The real question remains, what lies beyond? When the vagina begins to contract upon insertion, most men cannot withstand the stimulation and ejaculate. We call this a normal orgasm. But the true abyss, the last orgasm, lies beyond that. In truth, reaching this final stage is highly difficult for the average man. Because vaginal contraction is a stimulus designed to trigger the male ejaculatory reflex, most cannot endure this pressure. To reach this abyss, perfect preheating through emotional and five-sense connection, coupled with the man's own control to delay ejaculation, must align perfectly. There is something crucial to be mindful of here. You must abandon the jackhammer myth perpetuated by porn. The illusion that thrusting harder and faster equates to greater pleasure. Blindly thrusting deep and aggressively stimulating the cervix from the early stages of insertion is an act of ignorance. Unreasonable, piston-like stimulation in an unprepared state or without sufficient natural lubrication creates microtears in the vaginal wall, causing severe pain and postcoital discomfort, completely destroying the rhythm required for the last orgasm, making it impossible to endure the journey toward that ultimate horizon. You must consciously breathe deeply, relax your pelvic tension, and maintain a gentle, rhythmic stimulation from a shallow depth. You may temporarily reduce the depth of stimulation, but the rhythm must never break. As time passes, beyond superficial vaginal contractions, the cervix and the entire vagina begin to strongly press inward on their own. For the man, it feels as an intense illusion, as if the inside of the vagina is swelling like a sponge, swallowing him whole. This overwhelming physical sensation is precisely why the medical myth of cervical penetration or uterine sex, the false belief that the penis enters the uterus itself, continues to persist. In this phase, as the nervous system, already liberated once after the normal orgasm, tightens again, the female sensory threshold begins its second ascent. It is not superficial pleasure, but a pressure rising from deep within the body. Crossing the line where stimulation touching the cervix blurs between pain and pleasure, consciousness begins to let go of the ego. It is less about actively experiencing, and more about the body enduring as it surpasses its own limits. Finally, the woman's body reaches a biological limit, not a pornographic performance. Consciousness shuts down as if fainting, reason is paralyzed, and uncontrollable spasms occur. The observing ego vanishes, leaving only absolute sensation. This is the last orgasm. That said, this is not a standard to chase. For most women, and most men, reaching this state is extraordinarily difficult. What matters is this: after the normal orgasm, the man who holds on, who delays, who maintains rhythm without breaking, is already giving her something most men never do. The last orgasm is a horizon. The journey toward it is the gift. A word of caution for women who may be curious: this experience carries real physical risk. The sensation is often described as feeling close to death. For women encountering it the first time without a trusted, experienced partner, the pleasure fades quickly, leaving only the memory of overwhelming intensity. Many do not want sex again for a long time afterward. For older women, the physiological stress involved can be genuinely dangerous. This is not a destination to seek out of curiosity. It is something that, if it happens at all, must be approached gradually, only with a partner who knows your body, over time, under the right conditions. A warning: the only shortcut here is drugs. In South Korea and Japan, male hosts have been known to use narcotics to force women into this state. In South Korea, this is prosecuted as quasi-rape, a minimum of 3 years imprisonment. If sex is a pleasure activity based on safety and connection, there are acts born of ignorance and illusion that must be avoided. First, the issue of fingers and fingernails. What men overlook when using fingers on a woman's body is the fingernails. The sharp edges of nails easily tear the delicate mucosa of the vaginal wall. Through the abraded mucosa, pathogens hiding beneath the nails infiltrate, causing instant infection. Fingers with untrimmed nails that ignore hygiene are not tools of pleasure, but vectors of infection. This is not a matter of preference, but of strict hygiene. Second, the biological hazard of saliva. Equally disastrous is the porn-inspired trend of using spit as a substitute for lubrication. Human saliva contains digestive enzymes and bacteria that instantly disrupt the fragile, acidic microbiome of the vagina, frequently triggering severe bacterial vaginosis, BV, or yeast infections. Spit is not a lubricant, it is a biological hazard. Third, the reality of squirting. The reality of what porn is sold as the ultimate female pleasure is clear. According to medical studies, it is a phenomenon where the bladder fills rapidly during intense stimulation, expelling its contents in large volumes through the urethra. Now, the term female ejaculation is often used, but the word ejaculation itself is highly misleading. In reality, it's not an explosive burst. It is merely a minor fluid secretion of just a few drops from the Skene's glands. It only got that dramatic name because the fluid is chemically similar to male prostate fluid. Think about it. If a man's Cooper's fluid mixed with residual urine and poured out in massive volumes, no one would call that ejaculation. Using squirting as proof of ultimate pleasure is a commercial deception. It deliberately confuses a massive release of urine from the bladder with a tiny, subtle secretion of actual female fluid. Fourth, the illusion of size. Driven by the visual shock of dopamine-fueled porn culture, society has been conditioned to mock average sizes and obsess over unnatural proportions. However, M's mentors taught a piercing truth. For a man, hardness comes first, size is merely second. In biological reality, excessively large proportions require immense blood flow, making it physically difficult to maintain a rock-solid erection for extended periods. Without that enduring firmness, a man simply cannot sustain the rhythm necessary to endure the journey toward that horizon. Furthermore, nature is perfectly balanced. Average female vaginal depth and elasticity have evolved to naturally correspond with the average male proportions of their respective populations. Chasing pornographic extremes is a foolish act that abandons firm endurance, the true engine of female pleasure, in favor of a useless visual spectacle. Beyond ignorance and misinterpretation lies a deeper taboo. Taboo, conditioning, and bodily harm under the guise of consent. This includes coercing physically dangerous acts popularized by extreme porn, such as anal sex, which forces entry into an organ devoid of natural lubrication, risking severe mucosal tears and infection, or sexually taming a partner using pain, fear, and the relief that follows. What is criticized here is not the label of BDSM or the preference itself. We cannot condemn all role plays freely chosen for mutual enjoyment by fully consenting adults as trauma. The real issue is the act of repeatedly combining pain and reward by cunningly exploiting power imbalances in relationships and emotional dependency. Physical threats and pain activate the stress response, causing cortisol and adrenaline to skyrocket. What happens when sexual arousal and stimulation are combined with this state of extreme fear, followed by sweet relief after the pain ends? The partner instinctively clings for survival, not to the pain itself, but to the person who ended the pain and provided the relief. In a state where anxiety of abandonment and emotional dependency exist, superficial consent or safe words are mere decorations justifying coercion. This is not the sharing of pleasure. It is coercive conditioning that uses fear circuits to teach submission, a form of domination disguised as love. An incisive truth. Who is sex truly for? Mentors once said, for men, it's about touch. For women, it's about the entire sensory atmosphere. For men, desire is akin to a raw, instinctive urge to ejaculate, making them rush. But for women, it is a total immersion. Basking in emotional connection and all five senses, triggering a full-blown dopamine typhoon in the brain. Here follows another striking aphorism. Sex is designed for women. If the ultimate purpose of sex were merely male ejaculation, then premature ejaculation would, logically, be the most efficient function. The only reason medicine classifies it as a dysfunction is because it fails to orchestrate time and senses with a partner, leading to distress. This proves that sex is an orchestration, not a male discharge, a radical truth that completely overturns traditional sexual culture. Yet this truth reveals another shadow. If sex is an orchestration for two, what happens when the instrument begins to fail? Sexual troubles between men and women begin with the inherent physical limitations of the male body. As erectile issues arise from aging or frequent sex, men search for alternatives to cover up their physical limits. When endurance wanes and confidence drops, they are engulfed by a fundamental anxiety that their partner might cheat. To artificially mask this loss of natural firmness, ordinary men often resort to legal clinical fillers. However, those who view women merely as objects of sexual exploitation take a far more destructive path. They resort to grotesque, illegal physical modifications, inserting rigid silicone beads in Korea, pearls in Japan, or aggressive metal piercings in the West. They falsely package this as a tool for female pleasure. In reality, introducing rigid, unnatural materials into a space evolved for soft, rhythmic connection is a violent intrusion. It is not a technique, but a weapon that merely tears the delicate vaginal mucosa. And ultimately, whether driven by anxiety or exploitation, they attempt to replace true satisfaction by taming and subordinating through chemical trauma and physical violation, such as BDSM, illegal implants, and anal sex, or through extreme visual spectacles, squirting. What if these practices are not a malicious attempt to objectify the partner, but rather a pursuit of relationship peace amidst the biological limitations of waning erectile capacity? If it is a consensual role-play where the woman accurately understands the mechanism and voluntarily complies, a third party cannot recklessly condemn it. Is it not better than the tragedy of a middle-aged woman being hunted by a predator while seeking an alternative male organ? Perhaps this is the realistic, sexual order mammalian humans have found to overcome imperfect bodies and maintain relationships. Then what healthy sex should a woman pursue to maintain a healthy relationship with her partner? The answer is what was implicitly woven throughout the earlier stages: 5-sense sex. It is not a mechanical act focused solely on the genitals, but a deliberate, full-body symphony. It begins with sight, curating the atmosphere with evocative lighting or a beautiful space, banishing harsh brightness. It respects smell, the pristine scent of freshly bathed skin, perhaps layered with a subtle diffuser. It demands hearing, where mundane daily chatter is strictly forbidden, replaced by warm whispers and ambient music, whose very beat can gracefully guide the physical rhythm of your bodies. It explores taste, the immaculate freshness of a prepared mouth, making frequent, everyday kisses a constant prelude. Finally, it culminates in touch, which, as explored earlier, travels from the gentle indulgence of cotton candy to the ultimate journey toward the horizon. This intentional orchestration of the senses is the true intimacy a woman should pursue from the very beginning. Ideally, this 5-sense sex is shared together. However, when faced with unavoidable realities like a partner's erectile issues, a woman must know how to sustain her own fulfillment without turning to destructive extremes like BDSM. A female mentor once told M, "I don't keep sex partners just to avoid men who are only interested in my body and money. Instead, I masturbate, recalling the one I loved, the one I want to see again." When women recall fantasies, the oxytocin released is much stronger and lasts longer than in men. They can enjoy profoundly deep pleasure just through imagination. By channeling their 5 senses into this inner realm when necessary, women can satisfy their desires safely and beautifully. This applies exactly the same to relations with a partner. Moving beyond the limits of penetrative sex that relies solely on genitals, if one keeps the 5 senses open, through emotional connection, tools, and imagination, the journey can continue even when physical limits arrive. It is a peaceful alternative where the woman takes the lead to continue the relationship, transcending the man's limitations. Provided, of course, that any rough acts that could damage the woman's body, mucosa, are absolutely avoided. True orgasm is not about forcing your way through the brain's defense walls. It is about providing absolute safety so those walls can be dismantled willingly. In a dopamine economy, humanity increasingly forgets the process and indulges only in the result. As discussed through food in previous episodes of this series, romanticism is the attitude of resisting the urge to seize only the outcome and instead savoring the process. Sex is the same. There must be a story, memories of fluttering hearts and connection, ultimately forming a journey of physically cherishing and desiring one another. This video skips what you already know, and the fragmented common sense that AIs can spit out at any moment. It addresses what porn taught you wrong, and what it deliberately erased. The reason M does not specifically address male orgasm is that it is too simple and easy. But women are different. The commercialized sex products and blind hedonism created by men never fit the unique universe held within a woman's body. A woman feels true orgasm with the one she loves. That single sentence his first mentor gave him encompasses this entire essay. Sex is not the perfection of technique. It is the profound respect for that fleeting moment, when two universes overlap without colliding.